Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. My name's Tim Tritch. So about a year and a half ago, I did a series called UniFi for Newbies, and it was a 8-part series geared towards anybody getting into the UniFi ecosystem for the very first time. And it was very successful. I was very happy with it. You guys gave me some really great feedback and said, hey, for a first timer getting into this, in the early stages, it was exactly what you needed. However, that was about a year and a half ago, and so those videos, as I'm sure you probably know, are extremely outdated. And so I thought it would be a really good move to just go ahead and give them a little bit of a refresh. And just to kind of give you an idea of how old they are, that was on version like 8.3, and now we're on version 10, several iterations later in the UniFi world. And so they've moved features, removed features, added features, changed the way the look and feel is on things. It's almost 100% zone-based firewall rules, even though you don't have to do that. There's just a lot of differences from when I did this a year and a half ago. So I thought I would just add a nice new refreshed version of this because I know there's still a lot of new people getting into Ubiquiti for the very first time, and I want to give them something that they can sink their teeth into and learn this stuff for the very first time. Now, we are going to be doing this in a 5-part series this time instead of an 8. I'm going to take the camera portion I did last time and shrink that down into one video. We're also not going to talk about if UniFi is right for you or go over how to shop at the store. I really want this series to be all about setting up your gear and getting everything working from start to finish. I'm going to make the assumption that you've already made the leap into UniFi. So this will be a 5-part series. The videos will come out pretty close to each other, not all at the same time like I did last time. That was just way too much work, but I am going to kind of record them all kind of in a row, and then as I get them edited, I'll release them. So they'll come out pretty quick, I hope, but all in all, it just kind of depends on how the holiday goes and the scheduling and whatnot. But I am going to try and release things a lot quicker than I normally do. I'm really excited to do this, guys. This is long overdue, and my world's changed. I'm sure your world's changed. The UniFi world has definitely changed, and so it's just time to give this thing a facelift. So if you are new to UniFi, stay tuned, lock into this series because you are in the right place. Now, like I just mentioned, if you're new to all this, you're in the right place. This series that I'm recording right now was designed for anybody who's new to Ubiquiti, who wants to set up their network, start to finish, and hopefully is explained to you in a way that's not overwhelming or talking over your head. I want you to get what you need from it. However, if you are the type of learner that likes a little extra guidance, wants to be able to ask questions and get real-time answers and not just drop them in the comment section, or you have a specific situation about your home that you just can't find the answer, you want to riff with someone, I would actually encourage you to take a look at one of my Network Newbie Bootcamps. Now hear me out, I hate sales pitches, I hate it when people try to sell me stuff too, believe me. But I designed this specifically for that person, someone who's new to this space for the very first time and wants to get confidence in learning it, okay? So if this is you in any way, take a look at the link in the description. Take a look. I encourage you to take your journey to the next level, guys, because that's what it's designed to do. YouTube is great. This series, you should continue watching it. I think it's going to be great as well, but sometimes you just don't get all the answers, and so that's why I built it, to help those learners get the confidence they need to be able to build and manage and maintain their network for years to come. And so if that's you, I encourage you to take a look. All right, let's get back to the video now. All right, guys, so welcome to video 1. Today we're going to be talking about getting your gear online. So here's kind of our general starting point for today's video. You have your gear, you've already ordered it from Ubiquiti, unbox it, set it on your table. We're going to kind of use that as our starting point. Now I realize that a lot of you have already taken the plunge and got your gear connected to each other and adopted and everything, and that's okay. I still want to talk about all of that conceptually. We're going to talk about some of the best ways to connect your gear, just so make sure you have your stuff set up correctly. Maybe there's a piece of the puzzle that you missed as part of your setup. So we want to make sure we talk about all of it. Because with Ubiquiti, as I'm sure you guys know, there's just a lot of pieces and components to it that make it different from its competition. You got router gateways, you got switches, access points, built-in NVRs or completely separate standalone NVRs, cameras, there's cloud management, PoE, which is power over Ethernet, you got DAC cables, trunk ports, access ports. There's just so many pieces of this, right? There's just a lot. The days of just going out, buying a mesh system, plugging it in, using the special app, and you're up and running is great, but it doesn't come with all the benefits that you get with doing a Ubiquiti network. And so that's why we're all here. And so I want to make sure we all have this nice baseline and we get everything configured and set up correctly. Now, Ubiquiti gives us a couple methodologies for setting up our gear. I'm going to show you both of them. First, we're going to set everything up with the laptop. I'm going to plug into the network. We're going to get everything online, adopted. We'll do a little tour of the dashboard so you can kind of see how all the settings and screens are laid out. And then I'm going to factory reset it, and I'm actually going to set it up again using my cell phone. So again, if you're prevalent to one or the other, I'll make sure to have the chapters listed below so you can watch just that. But we're going to get our gear connected and get it set up as part of today's video. Then we're going to build from it for the rest of the series when we do VLANs, firewall rules, guest networks, and then we're going to talk about UniFi Protect in its own dedicated video. So as a little footnote, guys, we are not going to be setting up any UniFi Protect today. That will be 100% done in that video. We're going to kind of skip it. Now, we will talk about UniFi Protect conceptually a little bit because for a lot of you out there, your router gateway is also your NVR. And so we will talk about it, but we're not going to be doing any of that setup as part of today's video. Okay, so we have a lot to cover. I'm really excited to get this thing going for you. Like I mentioned, if you're new, you're in the right place. If you already have your network set up, that's okay. You're still in the right place. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and meet the equipment that we're going to be using throughout this series, okay? So for our setup here, we're going to be using a Cloud Gateway Fiber as our router gateway. We're going to be using a 2.5 gigabit flex switch for our managed network switch. That provides PoE, okay? And we're going to be using the U6 in-wall access point for our AP. Now, please don't worry about if you have multiple switches, different router, multiple of any of the stuff here. This is just a lab version. It's very small, but everything we're talking about will apply whether you have multiple devices. We're going to talk about, how to connect it all together, okay? So please don't worry about that. Now, if we turn our focus to the Cloud Gateway Fiber, I want to call out some things here that are important to know. All routers are made up of two different types of ports. You have your LAN port, which stands for Local Area Network, and you have WAN ports, which stands for Wide Area Network. So your WAN ports are your internet ports, okay? And those are signified on your device with the little blue globes when it comes to Ubiquiti. Those are pre-configured ports that are determined or predetermined to be your internet ports. And so for our ISP, our internet connection, you can see we are plugged into port 5, which has one of those globe on it. That is a WAN port, okay? The other ports are our LAN ports, and those are for plugging in local devices in our network. Could be other switches, could be access points, could be your TVs, could be your laptop, whatever you have locally in your network plugs into a LAN port, okay? And so our Cloud Gateway Fiber actually has ports 1 through 4, which are all rated for 2.5 gigabit speeds, and I can plug in any piece of equipment in my network to those ports. I can assign VLANs to those ports. I can do port security on those ports. I can do a lot of crazy things with those LAN ports to help protect my network, okay? Now, the other thing I want to call out, on the right side of the router, and you'll also see it on the switch, there are SFP plus ports, okay? Now, those are the little boxy ports there, and you can see port 7 also has a globe on it, so that port could also be used as my internet port, but you can't just plug a regular cable into it, okay? A cable's not going to go into it. It requires an SFP plus adapter of some kind. Now, I have an example of a couple of them here. This one right here is the RJ45 SFP plus adapter. So if I were to slide this into that port 7 with the globe, I could plug my internet connection into it because it allows me to plug in a standard internet cable or Ethernet cable, okay? So that's one option there. The other option is something like a DAC cable, okay? Now this is a solid cable that doesn't come apart. There's just one piece, and it has basically an SFP plus adapter on both ends. Now these are really great for connecting a switch that is right next to your router and both of them having those SFP plus ports. And this cable is rated for up to 10 gig. So if you look at both our router and our switch, those ports are 10 gigabit ports, which is going to give us a 10 gigabit backbone between our router and our switch. Now this is really great and allows you to run more traffic through your network at one time, because these faster ports are doing a bigger job as all the traffic flows through them, thus being your backbone. And so you'll see this one come into play. This is going to represent that pink cable where we have a 10 gigabit DAC cable plugged in from port 6 to port 9 on our switch to give us a 10 gigabit backbone, okay? Now these are really great. This doesn't come with your equipment. This is something you'd have to purchase additionally depending on what your setup is and what you need. But I will tell you, this one on Amazon right here was like 12 bucks, right? So this is not an expensive purchase and really can add a lot of wow factor to your network. So if your network has extended capabilities and has these SFP Plus ports, you can get them at different lengths. This is just a short one. They make them 3 meters of length, whatever. Ubiquiti sells them on their website. So lots of options here, guys. So maybe look into this. It's a really great way to go, but it is something additional that you'd have to buy, okay? All right, so for our benefit today, or for our setup today, our ISP is going to plug into port 5, which is just a standard internet connection. We're going to use the SFP Plus port and DAC cable to connect our switch, and then we're going to be using PoE provided by our switch, port 1, to our access point and bring it online. Now, I want you to be able to identify PoE ports, okay? So if I zoom in on my switch, you can see that all of these ports are all local area network ports. They're all LAN ports, okay? There's no WAN ports on a network switch, okay? That would make it a router. So these are all meant to have local devices plugged into them. They all have little lightning bolts connected to, or on the port, which signifies power over Ethernet, which basically means it's going to power our access point and provide network connectivity to it. And this applies with cameras as well, okay? That's what makes Ubiquiti really great, or really this type of networking really great, because Ubiquiti didn't invent PoE, they just made it accessible, okay? And then the little plus plus just basically means how much power that port can provide. And I'll compare it to the router above it. If you look at port 4, that is a PoE plus port. There's a single plus symbol, so that port maxes out at a certain amount of power, and the power in our switch maxes out at a higher power. But PoE plus is standard across the board. You're going to be able to power any of the cameras for the most part. You're going to be able to power just about any of the access points as well. So as long as you have PoE plus, you're in business. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and get our gear connected up here, and we're going to talk through this a little bit. So we're going to be following the diagram pretty close, but I did want to show you that if you did have this SFP Plus adapter, and you could just go ahead and slide it in. It only fits in one way. I just want to show you what that looks like kind of hanging out there. It does stick out of the router a little bit, or switch, wherever you're using it, but you know, just wanted to show you what that looks like. So we'll go ahead and pull that out. This little bottom part just folds down like that, and that allows you to release the device from there, okay? So that's the SFP Plus adapter, and again, this one's rated up to 10 gig. But according to our diagram, we're going to be plugging our internet into port 5 right here, which is, you see the little blue globe. So we have our internet connection right here, all right? We're just going to go ahead and plug that in there. And now that with our equipment powered on, we will be able to bring this online. The equipment will be able to be online enough to get registered and working for our setup today, okay? So we don't have to do anything. We just have to plug in an active internet connection, which we've done. Now, one thing I want to point out here is this particular port on my router is a 10 gigabit port, okay? That's great. That's awesome. Super. Love 10 gig, right? However, I only pay for 1 gig internet speeds at my house. So I could really plug my internet into a different port that was 1 gig, and it'd be okay. It'd actually be the same experience. So don't get carried away with the whole 10 gig versus 2.5 gig, whatever. You can only go as fast as the internet that you're paying for. But on the flip side, if you are paying for 2.5 gigabit speed internet at your house, please make sure you're plugged into a 2.5 gigabit or faster port. And so in that case, I would definitely want to be in a 10 gig or 2.5 gig port, so I could take advantage of my speeds. Because if I was plugged into a 1 gig port, which this doesn't have, but if I was plugged into a 1 gig port, there's 1.5 gig of speed I don't get to take advantage of because of that. So you want to kind of match things as best you can. This particular router has 2.5 gig and 10 gig ports, and so I'm just going to use one of the 10 gig ports for my internet, even though the fastest I'll ever go is 1 gig out to the internet. Now, like I mentioned, for our local area network, anything inside the network, it's nice to have a fast backbone. The backbone is the cable that connects this router to this switch. So we're going to be using our 10 gig DAC cable here, and because they're stacked on top of each other like this, that's why I got a nice short one here. And again, this has a little release. You pull this little tab here and it releases it out if you have to go in. It can only fit in one way, so don't worry about, there's no upside down to it. And it just slides right in like that, as you can see. And then our bottom one is going to slide in our other SFP plus port down here in the switch. And then you will see the link lights light up, indicating there is a connectivity between the two devices. And now we've physically connected our router LAN port into our switch LAN port, which switches, again, to recap, only have LAN ports, okay? All right, so now we have our devices talking to each other. And when we get in the setup process, you'll see that I'll be able to adopt these devices and bring them online. For our last piece, we're going to be talking about our access point here. So I already showed you that it has a single port on the back. And if you look at the back, it does say PoE in. I don't know if you can see that from any glare or whatever, but it does say PoE in plus data. So that's the port we want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and plug a cable into the back of that there. And then sticking true to our diagram, we're going to go ahead and use port 1 of our bottom switch here, which is going to provide both PoE power and network connectivity to our device. Now our switch here has two lights on it. One is a green light and the other is this yellow light. The yellow light indicates that this is a PoE port and it is providing power. That's, if I was plugged a laptop into this, you would only see the green light. You would not see the PoE light because that port on my laptop is not providing any power. It's only providing network connectivity. But because this cable is doing both power and network connectivity, you can see two lights. And I don't know if you can see the light blinking on my AP, but when they boot up, they actually have a little blinking light on them, or the center rings blink, so you know it's booting up. So that's what the lights indicate. The green light indicates that it's a gigabit or more connection, and the little yellow light indicates that it's providing both power and Ethernet connectivity to that device. All right. So real quick, let's talk about if you had multiple access points, okay? So this particular access point has a 1 gig connection on the back, but if I had another one that had 2.5 gig, I could plug it in right next door. You just need to be able to make sure you're plugging it into a port that comes as close to matching the speed as possible. I would try to match the speed if you could, as well as power, okay? So we only have so many ports that have power. And some of the switches out there, you'll notice half the ports are PoE and the other half are not PoE. They're just standard gigabit ports. So make sure you're plugging up your cable into a port that has PoE power, okay? And you could just simply plug multiple access points into this port and power them on, okay? It works very well. If you had another switch, you have multiple choices here. There's no real right or wrong answer, especially when it comes to a home network. But you want, again, take advantage of these fast speeds where you can. So this port right here is a 10 gig port, and this port is a 10 gig port. So if I had another switch that was capable of 10 gigabit networking, I would want to use one of those two ports to connect that switch, and again, give me that faster backbone. But let's say my switch was a standard 1 gig port, then it really doesn't matter where you plug it in at. It's going to be able to max out what speed is available to it. So now that we have this all connected, we're going to move to the computer here, which I'm going to go ahead and plug in now, and we're going to get this thing online. So I'm just simply plugging my computer, and I can literally plug it into any port available to me. I can plug it into the router, I can plug it into the switch, it does not matter. Just to keep things simple, I'm going to go ahead and just plug into port 1 on our router, and we're going to get this thing online and all of our equipment adopted. All right, so to get this thing online, I just basically went to 192.168.1.1, and that's going to bring up the setup process for the router. Now, you guys will need your Ubiquiti credentials to set this up. So whatever account you use to order the equipment, they force you to create an account. Everything's kind of single sign-on with Ubiquiti. So whatever account you use for that, you'll want to use for this as well, okay? So after you get through the little flashy intro there, you're going to be brought into here to show what do you want to name your device. Now I recommend naming it something. This is what you're calling your router, so you can call it Tim's router or Bob's router or Bob's Cloud Gateway Fiber, whatever, but call it something. I'm just going to call mine, I'm going to put a 1 in front of it because I have a couple other devices, and I'm just going to call this Newbie UCG Fiber, okay? So I'm just going to call it that so we know what it's called, and then I'm going to go ahead and say next. All right, so the next screen is asking us if we want to create an account. If you bought your equipment from someone else, you didn't need an account to buy it, so in that case you would need to create one. However, I'm going to go ahead and hit sign in. I do get a lot of people ask if you can do it without a Ubiquiti account, and the answer is yes, you can proceed without a Ubiquiti account. However, the cloud management piece will not be available to you. You need to use your Ubiquiti sign-in to be able to take advantage of managing your network from anywhere. It will be local access only if you don't do that. And so I would personally recommend signing in, using an account, and having that cloud access, because it basically means you can make changes, troubleshoot, access, see your network from anywhere. It just opens up a ton of options for you. And I'll explain here in a little bit that it's not a security risk, okay? And I'll explain how it works here shortly. But so we're gonna just go ahead and say sign in, and I'll probably have to blank out some of my screen here as we get signed into my account. Now, Ubiquiti did start multi-factor authentication, so they have an app that you use called the UniFi Verify app that you will need to verify your sign-in as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and open my Verify app. It's going to say, is this you? Do you trust this login? I'm going to say, yes, it's me. And then it's going to allow me to continue with the process. So if you haven't set up multi-factor authentication on yours might not do that, but Ubiquiti is recommending, and I think in some ways forcing their users to do that. So I would highly recommend doing it. It's really nice. It takes half a second. It's an extra second, but boy, it's just that extra layer of security that you have if you need to. All right, so I've played with this router before. You might not see this screen because I actually have backups of this device, but in this particular case, we're gonna say continue without a backup. We're gonna be setting this up fresh. So if you don't see a restore from a backup screen, that's okay. It just means I've set up this device before, so I'm gonna say continue without a backup. It's gonna initiate speed test. So this is kind of what we're talking about with that whole, you know, I pay for 1 gig of internet, I'm plugged into a 10 gig port. If you were paying for 2.5 gig and you were plugged into a 1 gig port, you know, you want to make sure you match things. But as you can see, I'm maxing out my speed on my little speed test here. And the reason it does this is it just wants to set the rules on this port that says this port is meant to take this much traffic through it. So it's going to kind of preset those for you. So you can allow the speed test to happen or not. It doesn't matter. You can always skip it. We're just going to go ahead and say next. And now it's going to go ahead and start setting up the basic config for our console and bring this up. Now, while this is doing this, this is a really good time to kind of talk through you about this whole management console piece. Because when you use your Ubiquiti credentials and you allow the remote management and these other features, basically you are accessing your device through the internet. However, I want you to know that all of the data on your router stays local. And I'll show a little diagram here shortly. You're just basically accessing a relay. You're basically going to a website, which I'll show you here shortly, and it's allowing you to it relays the configuration that you're making down to your equipment in a secure tunnel sort of manner. You're not actually putting your data up in the cloud. And I know that worries a lot of you out there. So just know that it is a secure process, okay? So I can either say go to dashboard, or I can say manage from unifi.ui.com. I'm going to try doing that. I think I have active internet connection now through my cable, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Remember, we access this by going to 192.168.1.1. That is the local IP address of our router currently by default. So if I hit go to dashboard, it would go to the local dashboard. But let's go ahead and try and hit go to unifi.ui.com, which is the website you would go, and see if we can access our router. Okay, perfect. Brought me to my login screen, which tells me I have active internet connection, and it's going to ask me to log in again, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now we are in, okay? So this is the dashboard you're brought to. Now, we haven't added any of our other devices. Basically, just our router is online right now, okay? Everything else is still kind of just sitting there. It's connected. You're gonna see what we need to do to bring it on here, but it is not part of our ecosystem quite yet. Ubiquiti has you adopt the equipment. So anything that you plug in, it's gonna, from any Ubiquiti device that you plug in, is gonna need to be adopted into the network. So the first step is to get your router online. That's your controller. That's the device that is managing your entire network. And then from there, we'll add the other pieces. So router first, and then we'll add all the other pieces, okay? So this dashboard, down the side here is our menu that we can use to go get to the different areas that we need to do. So this top one here is the dashboard, and you can see that there's a red light because there's multiple internet disconnections. Don't worry about that. We're just setting this up for the first time, so you might get some weird little notifications like that. If I go into the topology, you can see that it's going to actually map out our network, which is really cool. This next one is the UniFi devices. So this is the next screen we're going to spend some time on. You can see we have two devices here, a Flex 2.5 gig 8-port switch ready to adopt, and our in-wall HD access point also ready to adopt, okay? But this is where we're going to manage all of our Ubiquiti equipment. It looks like a little access point here. That is our UniFi devices, okay? Our clients are going to be the devices connected to our network. So this is going to be your TVs, your Alexas, anything connected wirelessly, tablets, whatever. If you have a Plex system, whatever, anything that you connect to your network and is considered a client. And so they'll all be listed right here in the client section. This part here is going to be our port mapper. This is really going to come into play when we start assigning VLANs. So we will come back to the screen, but for today's video, we don't need to spend any time in here. We have an insight, so this is actually going to just talk through, you know, where we're talking to, IP flows. You have just a ton of information at your disposal. Again, nothing we want to talk about today because it's overkill. Next below that, you have our settings. So this is where we're going to go in and actually create our networks right here. We can create our Wi-Fi networks. We can adjust our internet, set up VPNs, all sorts of things. This is where we're going to set up our firewall rules. All that's going to be done in the settings here. Okay, our logs is where our system actually tells us what's going on. So we'll spend some time in that as well, just showing you what's in there. Not today, but again, just showing you what the menu does. Alarm manager is where we're going to set up our alerting. So your network can actually alert you when something goes wrong. It can actually say, hey, my fan is offline or my internet went down. This is a very powerful thing. When I had a mesh system, a lot of them didn't tell me when my internet was go down. I'd come home and the internet wasn't working. I had to just kind of discover it on my own. Oh, nothing's working. Ubiquiti will actually notify you your internet is down, which is super, super great, and allows you to just not walk into a mess. So we'll look at Alarm Manager. Probably won't spend a ton of time in here, but the Ubiquiti or the boot camp we do spend some time in here, and I go over like alarms and stuff that I really like. And then you can actually set up other admins. This one is just set up with my personal account here, but you could have your wife be able to access this, or maybe you have a buddy, or let's say I was working on your network for you. You could add me to your network and I would have access to your network from here, again, using that relay. And it would allow me to help you troubleshoot your network. I'm not saying that's what we need to do, but it does give you the capability of doing that, which is really great. So we're going to go back, we're going to focus on our UniFi devices, and we're going to go ahead and get these adopted. Now, adopting them is very, very simple. You just click to adopt. And when you click to adopt, basically what it's going to do, it's going to learn everything from your cloud gateway device. It's going to, your router in our case here, is acting as a controller. So when we make a configuration change in one place in our controller, it tells all the devices about that change. So for example, when we make some Wi-Fi networks during our VLAN Wi-Fi setup, I'm going to come into my controller, my router, and I'm going to say, make this VLAN and make this Wi-Fi network. And my controller, because it's part of this and it's been adopted, it will tell everything, all the devices, what they need to know. Say, hey APs, here's your new Wi-Fi network. And hey switches and access points, here's your new VLANs. And it just tells everything what's going on. It's really, really cool. It gives you a single pane of glass to be able to manage and set up your entire network. Okay, really, really great. So we're going to go ahead and just say click to adopt, and you can see it says adopting, which is great. And I'm going to just go ahead and adopt my access point as well. And you can see it changes from adopting to getting ready. Getting ready basically means I've been adopted in the system. I'm just learning what I need to learn from the system. And when it's all done, it's going to go green like you show right here. Okay? Now, one thing I would recommend that you guys do is to name your equipment. Okay? So I'm going to go in and name this switch so it's not just called USW Flex 2.5 gig switch. Because if I had 3 of them, they'd all be named that. Same thing. They would all be named USW Flex 2.5 8-port PoE. That doesn't help me if I'm trying to figure out which switch is which. So you can actually name your devices. This is something I highly recommend that you guys do. You'll hear me preach about it over and over and over, and if you take my boot camp, you'll really hear me preach about it. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this switch. Everything's clickable. So if I want to go in and learn more about this device, I just simply click on it, and it brings up all sorts of stuff. There's a port manager where we can assign VLANs. We can look at what's all connected, its IP address, its MAC address, what version it's on, what's connected to it, lots of different things, how much power we're using. So we're using 4 watts out of a total of 196 watts that this switch is capable of. This is really great. It means we're nowhere near going anywhere near our power thresholds. And it also tells us which ports are being used. So if I hover over this port, you can see that port 1 is connected to my in-wall HD right here, my access point. And this port is connected to, hover over and go down, the Newbie UCG fiber, so you can see what it's uplinked to. And so it actually knows what's connected to it, which makes it very, very powerful. So we're going to go to the settings here. We're just going to name this switch. And let's just say that this switch was in my rack. So I'm going to just call this, we'll say this is my rack flex. I don't need the 8-port PoE. So let's just say it's my rack flex 2.5 gig switch. Okay. So now I know where that's located, and I've given it a name. So we'll go ahead and hit apply changes. Perfect. And now you can see it's changed its name in there. If I had 2 or 3, I could name the other one kitchen switch or office switch, and then I know which switch is which. Okay. So naming your devices really comes into play. Same thing with my in-wall access point. Let's say this was my office AP. Okay. So I'm just going to come over here. I'm going to click on the device. I'm going to go to settings. Okay, so you got a menu up here. There's multiple things you can go to. We're going to go to settings, and we're just going to call this office in-wall AP. So we know where this AP is located, okay? Now we can get more granular in our settings. We can set our frequencies. We can do all sorts of stuff. We're just going to leave everything as default right now, okay? We don't need to change anything. Ubiquiti gives you a really decent setup right out of the box. We don't have to get too granular with today's video. So we're just going to kind of keep things very simple, very high level, but we're going to go ahead and hit apply changes. You can see our AP will get its new name. There it goes. And then because we made a change, you might see some of these other devices learning because we made a change on the network. So now if I come over to my mapper over here, there you go. You can see this went green and this one went yellow for a minute. But if I go over here to my port mapper, you can see that my Newbie UCG fiber router is connected to my rack flex switch, which is connected to my office in-wall AP. See how naming them really does make a big difference, so you know where everything is, and if you want to troubleshoot something, you can. And I can actually get to the settings of these devices by clicking on this screen as well. Pretty cool. There's a lot of different ways you can get to certain things with Ubiquiti. And one of the things they've really expanded on that's different from the version I did a year and a half ago is they've just given you a lot better ways to filter your results if you're looking at something specific. Networks are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, more devices, and so they allow you to filter your clients and filter your access points and filter everything to wired devices versus wireless, online to offline. As you can see over here, I can look at just 2.5 gigabit Wi-Fi device clients and just look at those. You really can throttle down your data when you're looking for something, and that's something they've done a really good job of, okay? So now if we go into our devices, you can see we have everything online. Everything is talking, okay? And let's see here. These do move. I can slide these around a little bit, just so you know. You can see that my uplink I'm plugged into a 10 gigabit port, and my flex switch also is using a 10 gigabit port. But like I mentioned on my access point, it doesn't have a 2.5 gig. It only has a 1 gig connection, and you can see that we're connected at 1 gig, okay? We are good to go. All right, guys. So now we have the exact same setup, but we're gonna set this up using our cell phone. So I'm just gonna start at the app on the screen, and we're gonna log in using the same account. So I'm just gonna say continue as Tim Tritch here, and it'll bring me into the account. So you would sign into the account with your credentials that you have from Ubiquiti, okay? Now, when you get logged in, your screen's probably gonna look a little bit different because I manage multiple different sites, but it'll either automatically detect it if you have your Bluetooth on, or you might have to hit this little plus symbol in the top right corner, which is going to bring it up. But I'm gonna actually close out the app here and just open it fresh to see if it just magically kind of brings up the little display. There you go. So this is what you would normally see saying, hey, I went out and found a device. Go ahead and hit setup to get started. So we're gonna go do that. Now, you need to be in fairly close range of your device to do it. And you're going to be seeing very similar screens than we saw when we set it up using the computer. So I'm just going to go ahead and just call this Newbie Cloud Gateway Fiber, okay? And I'm going to say next, and it's going to do our speed test just like we did before. I'm going to go ahead and skip that this time. All right, and now it's going to go ahead and do its setup process. Now, one thing I will tell you, and I don't think I mentioned this last time, but if your router you're just taking it out of the box for the first time, chances are it's going to have an update. So this process might take a little longer than it is in this video because as part of the setup process, it'll actually go ahead and install your firmware updates for you as well, which take a little bit of time because they have to download them. It'll actually send them to the router will have to accept them and then reboot. So it just takes a little bit longer, but as you can see, our setup actually went pretty fast because we didn't have any updates. So I'm just going to go ahead and say go to dashboard, and it's going to take us right into our equipment. Very similar screen that you saw before. This is what the mobile dashboard looks like. So I can still go to topology. Okay, I can still get to my alarms. I will say there is functionality that is on the computer that is not on the mobile app, but for the most part, setting up your VLANs and setting up that sort of thing, it will work. However, your menu is across the bottom this time. So this is our main dashboard, signified here by this little icon in the bottom left. If we go to this one, this is going to be our devices. So you can see it found our switch and our AP again and is ready for adoption. So this is where we would go to do that. This is where we would have our clients. Now we don't have any because my computer is no longer connected to this device. So there are no clients, but if we connect wirelessly, once we get our wireless network set up, they'll all show up here. You still have your insights and some of the ports settings, so you can set and assign VLANs and build VLANs in the mobile app, which is really powerful. And then we have our settings. This is where we're going to build our Wi-Fi and our networks, and where we could do VPN and check some of our policy stuff. We could even look and review and set up firewall rules from the app, although I will say it's much easier doing it from a computer because there's just more screen space and it's just easier to do. All right, so to keep things rolling, not to reinvent the wheel here, we're just going to go back over to devices, and we're going to go ahead and adopt our devices. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this device. You can see the adopt device button right there, so I'll go ahead and do that, and we get a notification saying that it is being adopted. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit my back arrow here, and I'm going to choose my access point. I'm going to adopt that. again, being notified. So some of the notification alerts that we can touch base on, or I'm actually going to do a whole separate video on this, you can actually say, I want you to tell me when something's being adopted. If you have multiple people managing a network, it'll actually tell you if someone is adopting a device. So I don't know if you saw it there on the screen, but it did say adoption failed at first. I did have to factory reset this, so I assume that's related to that. Hopefully it is getting ready now and we won't have any more issues. You can see that we have a 10 gigabit connection between our gateway and our switch, signified here. And we can go in and name our devices just like we did before. So I'm going to go ahead and click my switch. You can see a very similar screen. I also have the 3 tabs across the top that show very similar information. I'm just going to go ahead and click on the settings gear and then click on name. And like I mentioned, I'm just going to call this rack 2.5 gig. And I think I put switch last time. All right, hit save. And now it has renamed this to rack 2.5 gig switch. We can go ahead and do that with our in-wall as soon as it's getting ready. Hopefully that'll be soon. If I wanted to rename my router, I can actually do that as well in the system. So that's kind of cool. We'll go over to our dashboard. Oh, there, my access point showed up. So last time I think we called this office in-wall access point. So we'll go call it that again. Office in-wall AP. Perfect. And now we have that name. But again, we can go through and you can click names. You can see what it's broadcasting, how many clients is using each of your Wi-Fi bands. There's a lot of information it shows in the app. The app is very, very powerful, and it's gotten better and better over the years, which I really like. So now we have our equipment online. We can actually see everything right there. I can go to my topology, and just like before, you'll see that actually it's all in line this time. Let's see if I can reconnoiter it a little bit. So my internet comes in, goes to my router, which goes to my switch, which goes to my AP. It's a single straight line right now, but as we add more devices, it'll branch off a little bit, which is kind of cool. And something else you can do too is you can actually see the throughput going through your network with this little play icon, and this is also available on the laptop as well. But if you want to see which devices are utilizing most of your network connectivity, you can actually, it'll turn on this little animated feature that kind of shows how thick all the traffic is, which is really, really neat. So that's available to you too. So again, I don't want to spend a lot of time in here. The goal today was just to get our equipment online, which we've done. We're going to spend some more time in these menus, most likely doing it on the computer app because I just think it's easier to do. But just know that you can do a lot of the functionality that we're talking about inside the app itself, which is really, really great. So now you can see we have everything set up. Everything is online. I can manage it. Now that I've set it up on my app, I can actually go to my computer and go to unifi.ui.com and access it that way too. I can be in it at the same time, whatever. There's a lot of options available to me now that I have this thing online and connected to my, my cloud account. So really, really cool, guys. I hope this is helpful. I know we talked about a lot of stuff. That's the beauty of YouTube. You can back up, fast forward, and rewind and look at things. I'll try to put as much stuff I'll try to link out the bottom so you know which part of the videos we're talking about what, because I tend to ramble on. But hopefully this is helpful to you guys, understanding sort of a baseline on how Ubiquiti works, the pieces to it, and how to get it online. So I really, really appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for tuning in. Please tune in for the rest of the series. These are going to come out a little bit more rapid fire than you're used to. I'm on break from work, so I have a little more time to record and edit, so I'm going to try and get all these knocked out. Again, links for the bootcamp are down in the description. If that's something you're interested in, we break down these concepts, but you have the option to ask questions in real time, so it really is beneficial. So if that is something you're interested in, please take a look and go ahead and get signed up. I do limit how many people can join the bootcamp at one time because I don't want to have too many in a class and then everybody doesn't get what they're looking to get out of it. So if that is something you're interested in, act now. I would really appreciate it. Again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the next video series that I'll be working on next.